This is World History 1, Chapter 2, Segment 4. Sophisticated city planning. The Harappans used a grid system to plan things out. So if you look at a piece of grid paper, that is a grid system. Now imagine you start to lay out houses in there by connecting the dots on the blue squares, one after the other after the other. That is how they mapped out their cities. So very far in advance, lots of planning went into the development of their cities. At the center of their city would be a citadel, similar like a tower and what we would think of for a castle. And then all around that would be the rest of the city. The citadel was meant to be a place of last resort. After the city walls had been breached, you could run to the citadel and it would be your last fortification to try and hold out an enemy attack. The citadel would also be where the royal family lived. It would also be where you'd have special temples, things like that. And everything in city life revolved around the citadel. Another thing the Harappans are known for are their plumbing and sewer systems. They had ways of taking waste and garbage out of the city that you won't see again till ancient Rome, and then after that you won't see again until the industrial age. They were very far in advance when it came to plumbing and sewage. Another thing that they used in their city was standard brick size. While this may not seem very significant on the surface, it is, because any brick maker in the entire city or area, you could take bricks from one person or the other and you could intermix them. Imagine if a brick maker from company A made his bricks 1 foot high and the next brick maker made his only 8 inches high. If you tried to pair those bricks together to make a house, it would be extremely difficult. They would never match up perfectly evenly, and you would have all different types of blocks, and you would have quite a mess trying to figure out how to pair them together so you could make your house work. If every brick was exactly the same, didn't matter where you got your bricks from, you could build any structure with them. The Harappans, they built their houses on platforms. The reason for it is the monsoons and the floods. It rained so heavily during the monsoon season, and they had unpredictable floods. So if you have your house on platforms above the ground, if it did flood, your house wouldn't get ruined. They also had walls for protection around their cities, and their streets were 30 feet wide. The reason they were so wide is you could have travel in all directions. So you could have a cart going up one street and then a cart going down that same street, and you wouldn't have to worry about them running into each other. We already talked about the citadel. As I said, the royalty, royal family, and there'd be temples there as well. The houses were aligned. That's how it goes with the grid system. Everything in rows and columns. They had washrooms, so a specific place inside their inside or on out or connected to the outside of the house where they would bathe or use the toilet, and then that sewage would then be washed into a canal, and that wouldn't be plumbing like we have today. It'd be an open-faced small ditch canal, but then would run out into a larger canal which would then flow out of the city. So yes, not as good as modern plumbing and sewage, but still all of those wastes would then flow out of the city so that people in the city could be more cleanly and hygienic. When you compare that to people in the Middle Ages who were taking their waste and just throwing them directly out into the street, you could see why disease was so rampant in the Middle Ages and not so much with the Harappans. Here we have an artist's representation of what the Harappans would look like. So notice the house is up above the ground. You need steps to get onto the base level. This will prevent any flooding from destroying anything in the house. Here is one of those ditches, those sewage ditches I was talking about. So waste would flow from here in the outhouse, here down into this ditch, and then water would then flow this ditch outside the city, which would keep people relatively hygienic. And then you see the wide thoroughfares or streets, making it easy for travel here. And you see that most of the bricks are the same size, going with that standard brick size, making it very easy to build structures. And you also notice that They're all covered and aligned in rows and columns. Harappan culture. They had a language. We talked about that already, and it was impossible to decipher because of the bilingual inscriptions. There's not something that translated Harappan into hieroglyphics into Sumerian cuneiform. We don't have anything like that, making it impossible to figure out exactly what their words and phrases were. Their culture. There were small differences in class, meaning most people were very similar with how much money that they had. They had toys for their children. I'm going to tell you that meant that they were prosperous. I would like for you to tell me how you know this. How does a culture having toys tell us that they were prosperous? Or how does a culture that has few weapons tell us that there was little conflict? I would like you to write your answer in your notes. So once again, your question is, how do toys show us that a culture is prosperous? And how do few weapons show us that a culture had little conflict? Write that answer at the bottom of the page for your note packet. We will discuss that at the beginning of the next class period. Continuing on with the Harappan culture, they believed in a theocracy, which once again is religion and government twined into one. So whatever laws your religion has are also laws of the state, which is not what we have in America today. You notice if you belong to, let's say, the Catholic Church, it is technically a sin to lie. So if you tell an untruth, that's a bad thing. You're not supposed to do that. Now, in the American legal system, if you lie to someone, you're not punished for that crime. It's not a crime unless you're lying under oath, which is perjury. So we do not have a theocracy. If it were a theocracy and you lied to someone on the street, you could be punished for that crime in the legal system. The Harappan religion also had links to Hinduism, which we will study later. And the Harappans also had an extensive trade network. You find gold and silver from Afghanistan in the Harappan culture. You find precious stones from Persia. And what that tells us is that the Harappans traded those goods or in Afghanistan and Persia, or Persian or Afghanistan traders came into Harappa, traded their goods there. Either way, we know that there are links between those cultures. The rivers, the Indus River, the Ganges River, were used as transportation, as links. So you could take a boat anywhere you wanted along those rivers, and you could take the river to the sea, and then you could go in the Mediterranean Sea, and you could follow that all the way to Mesopotamia and link up on the Tigris and Euphrates with the Mesopotamians or Sumerians. The Indus Valley culture will end though, and the way we start to see this is archaeologically you see a decrease in the amount of buildings being built in Harappan cities, which showed us that you have less and less of a population increase, which means that your civilization is in decline. There are a few different reasons as to why this might have happened. Number one is a shift in tectonic plates. What would happen is the tectonic plates would shift, cause earthquakes, which would then cause floods, which would change the flow of the rivers away from the Harappans, which would mean they would either, their civilization would end up withering and dying, or they would have to move somewhere else. Another thing that could have happened is the overuse of soil. Now this could have been used by itself or could have been used in conjunction with the changing river flows. If they farm the same soil over and over again, they will overuse it and deplete it of nutrients, which isn't such a bad thing in places where a new layer of topsoil is constantly being replenished with silt. But if the river changes directions and you no longer have that silt, you could overuse the soil in just a matter of years then, which is good of what happened. And then once again, either in conjunction or by itself, nomads could have invaded. People could have come in and raided and then taken over the Harappans. This could have happened by itself, or it could have happened after years of weakening because of bad harvests because of the overused soil and the change of the river. We're not sure if it's any one single factor. Most likely it's a combination of all of those. Next, we're going to talk about river dynasties in China. So first, we're going to talk about the geography of China. China had a lot of barriers which help protect it. In the east, you have the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and the Pacific Ocean. So water acted as a barrier for people coming in. You would have to have an advanced navy, which at this time no one really had, to invade China from that direction. For the rest of it, mountain ranges and deserts covered 2/3 of China's landmass. So to get into the heart of China, you would have to cross over a mountain range or a desert, which is very tricky. You would need lots of supplies, and you would have to know how to do it, which ancient civilizations that would be very difficult. In the west, you have the Taklamakan Desert and a 15,000-foot icy plateau of Tibet, once again keeping people out. And in the southwest, you have the Himalaya Mountains. So all those things prevented people from invading. And then in the north, you have the desolate Gobi Plain and the Mongolian Plateau, which once again will prevent people from invading China from any of those areas, or at least help prevent them. Here we have a map of China. So as we said, here's going to be your Gobi and Mongolian plateau up here. And then in the west and southwest, you're going to have mostly mountains and desert. And then over here, you're going to have the ocean. The main places we're talking about are on the Yellow River. These are where most of the ancient river valley civilizations will take place. There are several river systems in China. The first that we'll talk about is the Huangjia River, or the Yellow River. This is in central China, and it flows east to the Yellow Sea. It's called the Yellow River because there's a yellow fertile silt there called loess, and just like in the other river valley civilizations, after lots of flooding, this yellow fertile silt comes to the surface, deposits on the land, fertilizing the soil. Floods from the Yellow River could be quite disastrous. If you had too much rain, then it could wipe out whole villages and destroy whole crops. China was isolated, but not completely protected from everyone. You will see Mongolians and other tribal groups from the north do invade China from time to time. Northern China is the North China Plain is the most important area. It is the most fertile part of all of China. China, as I said, is mostly desert, plateaus, and mountains. Only 10% of China can be farmed, which makes the North China Plain very important because that area has to feed all of China, which is going to be a substantial population.